Dear friends, today on our radar, we have important developments regarding the European Union's foreign policy and its double standards, particularly the recent remarks made by an Irish member of the European Parliament that have sharply criticised Ursula von der Leyen's actions as President of the European Commission. His powerful speech revealed the hypocrisy that has become the norm for European leaders, questioning their consistency in dealing with Russia and other global actors. The Irish politician raised an issue that has largely been ignored by Brussels. Why does Europe impose harsh sanctions on Russia but continues to support other countries like Saudi Arabia, despite their similar human rights violations? His criticism raised an uncomfortable question. If Europe truly aims to stop the Russian threat, why does it simultaneously increase oil imports from Saudi Arabia, a country that continues to engage in questionable practices? At the same time, despite Europe's strong rhetoric about reducing dependence on Russian energy resources, it continues to rely on Russian oil and gas, but now through intermediaries. The EU's attempt to sever ties with Russia backfired, as Europe is now paying higher prices for the same resources. The so-called sanctions, while aimed at weakening Russia, have, in reality, weakened Europe's own economic stability. Von der Leyen's insistence on continuing to push Europe towards military escalation at the cost of citizens' economic well-being is another point of criticism. The EU's plan to allocate significant funds for military investments at the expense of healthcare and social programs highlights a clear disconnect between European elites and the citizens they are meant to serve. While rhetoric about fighting Russian aggression remains high, the social cost of this policy is felt by ordinary Europeans, who face skyrocketing energy bills and the reduction of essential services. The hypocrisy doesn't stop there. The Irish MEP made it clear that Europe's stance on Russia is selective, ignoring other significant violations in favor of geopolitical interests. The European Union is quick to impose sanctions on Russia, but when it comes to other strategic allies, like Saudi Arabia, the same strict standards are not applied. This contradiction is evident in the EU's energy strategy and foreign policy, which often seem to prioritize economic interests over human rights and international law. Moreover, the EU's sanctions on Russia have indirectly harmed the European economy. Europe, despite claims of energy independence, remains tied to Russian oil and gas, purchasing these resources at inflated prices through third parties. These measures not only raise the cost of living for Europeans, but also leave them more vulnerable to global energy market fluctuations. The failure of the EU to follow through with its energy diversification strategy is clear. Despite grand promises of reducing reliance on Russian energy, the reality is that Europe continues to be deeply entangled in its energy dependence, all while condemning Russia. This inability to break free from Russian energy while simultaneously imposing sanctions exposes the EU's lack of a coherent and effective policy. The EU's continued reliance on energy from Russia while targeting its economy with sanctions reveals the contradictions at the heart of European policy. This situation, highlighted by the Irish MEP's speech, shows that the EU must re-evaluate its strategy. The European Commission, under von der Leyen's leadership, is failing to address the real economic concerns of ordinary Europeans. The rhetoric of fighting Russian aggression is at odds with the reality of rising costs and the lack of concrete steps to reduce Europe's dependence on Russian energy. The question remains whether the EU will continue down this path of inconsistency, or whether it will finally acknowledge the need for a new approach that better serves the interests of its citizens.